It's not all doom and gloom. Nobody's playing gloom. All this and more coming up on This Week in Retro.
High-resolution color graphics.
This land of high technology.
The revolution in technology that made the information age possible.
Those kids are not afraid of computers.
Feeling blue about Ray.
Video games are history.
First-person senior citizens.
All this and more coming up on this week's show.
Up-to-date news for out-of-date tech.
Hello.
Hello. We are joined by Dean
Dave.
today.
Yay!
Dave.
Hello, Dave.
And MeanMachineDean. He's not mean.
Hello.
We don't think he's a machine, although that wave might say otherwise.
He's definitely not mean. He's very nice.
I've gone out of control. Dean. Hello, Dave. Hello, Neil. Hello,
Welcome.
Twirlers and Duncan, who we still have yet to see, as far as I'm aware. So he might be the machine. We don't know.
He is a machine. Never forget Duncan.
Yeah.
Welcome to the show.
Welcome back.
I think we should start off by talking about your T-shirt that's just out of shot. Dave, why don't you ask a leading question?
What does your T-shirt say? And why is it backwards?
Is it backwards on your screen? Well, it doesn't. I'm not going to try and attempt to read it in backwards, but it says console revive to us normal humans. And it is my new company that's been going for about a year. We do everything from custom shells for relatively well-known retro consoles. I also do complete consoles. What else do we do? Arcade fighting sticks.
Listen to this sales patter. This is fantastic.
HDMI upscalers, HDMI mods. And in fact, I actually have one of my shells here, which is...
Ooh. Oh, it's a
Sega Game Boy, isn't it?
It is, yes. It's one of those obscure Sega Game Boys. But yes, a custom greeny yellow. It actually looks better in person than it does on camera. But yes, and it is lovely. Or if you are feeling flush, you can put LEDs and make it look special. But yes, things like this. So search for console revive, and it's all there.
Fantastic.
Basically.
He sells seashells on the seashore.
And GameCube shells.
Yeah. You're also a streamer, though, in case people aren't aware. You stream maybe 2 or 3 nights a week.
Yes, depending on how I'm feeling. But yeah, usually every Tuesday and Thursday, 8 till whenever I can be bothered, normally at 10. But as of late, I have pushed on a little bit further due to completing the latest Indiana Jones game, which was...
Yes, no spoilers, because we're going to talk about that.
Yeah, we are. Keen to find out, because it's been a bit of a theme on this recently, how that game is.
Now, Dave, I asked you earlier what you'd been up to this week, and you actually said, and this is okay as an answer, not very much retro, if at all anything this week. Sometimes you need a week off, right?
Yeah, I've been busy with my with family stuff, unfortunately. Not, my old dad needs a bit more time.
Fair enough. Okay, well, it's all right not to have retro in your life sometimes for a week or so.
I have been playing Ultima 6 though, but that's not really notable, is it? I mean,
bring back the Ultimate counter.
What have you been doing, Neil? You know anything nice?
I have been making. We finished up the series on the Space Race arcade, which has been very popular, and
Fantastic.
I've now got around to making the video about the rebrand of. Not the rebrand, the coming together officially of the Retro Collective and the new place that we're going to output videos and things. This Week in Retro, of course, part of the Retro Collective. So when we make new banners and new information on our websites and things, your face is going to be there, Dave. This Week in Retro is going to be there. And I've spoken about this before, rented a bit of extra space at the mill that needs some work doing. So we can become, and this will all be explained in the video, a proper museum. And I mean that in terms of the way we store and inventory items and repair items. So I've put together a digital support bundle, which the link, it may or may not be live by the time this show goes out. I think it will be live. So go to rmcretro.store and it will be on the front page. And you can download it right now. I'm gonna tell you all about it. Hold on, let me get the list because it's
a goodie bag. It's a goodie bag of various things that are of value and worth it that people have given to you to help you raise money by selling this digital bundle of goodies, I think.
Exactly. I'm not going to go through them all, but some of the highlights include the complete Xenocrisis game for the Mega Drive, Pixel Addict and Amiga Addict magazines, a discount code from consolerevive.com. Thank you, Dean. There's lots of books. There's the It Returned to the Desert full game. There's Sega Mania magazines. There's the STL files to 3D print your own space race and computer space. An album from C64audio.com. There's loads and loads and loads and loads of stuff. So go and check it out. And yeah, so the idea is not to go cap in hand and say, can you help us with this? It's to say, here's something really cool that I think you'll probably like. And if you do buy it, it will help us to achieve our goal. So look out for that video soon. And I will stop plugging it now because this is not the place for it, Dave. Give me a slap.
Yeah. No more plugging. You don't see me plugging anything I'm doing.
Go on, plug something. Plug Dot.
I'm not doing anything that needs plugged. I'm not a shameless grifter.
You take that back. You take that back. Do you want a show today?
I don't mean it. I don't mean it. No, I don't. Not at all. Shall we go on with the show, though? That's why people are here. No, the show.
No,
okay.
I'm done.
Shall something else. It is the beginning of the end. It is not the end. And I think it'll be a long time in the future, but it is definitely the beginning of the end, not just for Blu Ray and not just for optical media, but I think all mainstream physical media, full stop. I think it's coming to a slow end. And I'll come back to tell you why that is soon. Optical media, though, has been around for a very long time, almost 100 years, in fact. Optical recording and playback was invented in the 1930s. An early analog optical disc was patented in the 60s, which Wikipedia says is the precursor of DVD, and I don't understand why not CD, but there you go. The first big commercial one, there didn't come until the 70s. DiscoVision. Are you into DiscoVision, Dean? Thank you.
Yes.
I love the name, but actually, it's not a popular name. It was changed in 1980 when Panasonic bought most of the company and changed the name to Laserdisc. Now have you heard of it?
Yes.
It's an analog format around the size of an LP vinyl record.
Can you imagine how cool you'd be if you owned Saturday Night Fever on DiscoVision in the 70s?
Is that what Dean was dancing to?
Yeah, maybe.
Yes.
I can imagine Dean in his white leisure suit walking down with his
with a big gold medallion. That's what's needed.
Yeah. Taking the big
lots
gold
of
medallion off and sticking it in the Laserdisc player.
Yeah.
And I like, Dave, that you're using vinyl records as a size reference because that is an example of an old format that people are familiar with because it's popular again. It fell out of favour and now it's back and now you can reference it, albeit not an optical format. Yeah. How big is a vinyl record, Dave?
About 30 centimetres, 1 foot, 12 inches. The two of them are contemporary formats, though. Laserdisc and vinyl were the very contemporary formats. I think the reason why...
Actually, I think you'll find there are also 7-inch vinyl records, Dave.
Yes, there are. That's great. I'm glad you pointed that out because without pointing that out, nothing would have been different. The reason I think why people like the Laserdisc is because it's got that wonderful art. Nerds like us like the fact you can hold this thing and see the wonderful artwork on it. Next, of course, came the audio CD, probably the most successful format that's came out in optical. And then an offshoot of that, the video CD and a few others, including the mini disc, which is a cassette-sized optical disc in a protective shell. The audio CD came out worldwide in 1983. It's about the size of your outstretched hand, more or less. Later came, of course, the big one for us, the CD-ROM, but there were CD-based things with data on them, although some of them kind of weirdly recorded as analog audio in a digital format to be turned back into digital on the Commodore 64, Neil.
I like to think that there's someone listening to this podcast in 50 years' time who actually benefits from you explaining the size of a CD-ROM, because I'm pretty sure everyone knows the size of a CD right now. But, I think that'd be cool. And also, I've got a feeling that Dean might have been a mini disc man feel like he
I
was.
was.
Yes,
I was. Genuinely.
Is that the type of machine he was? He was a mini discman.
Before he became a mean machine.
Exactly. No, I loved my mini disc. I remember the day I got it, I was blown away by it. In fact, the one thing I used to do, I think the PS2 had an optical output on the back. So I used to like optical output stuff out of there. And if it was like, in fact, geeking out here, getting wrestling themes. So I used to play like SmackDown and get the themes and then record it onto there. So there you go, complete offshoot from the story. But yeah, I mean, example of how useful the mini disc is, and I believe people still use it for optical recordings even till today. So a timeless piece of technology.
Yeah, it was a really good format, and I think had it come out long enough before MP3 players, it would have really embedded itself more. It was a big success in Japan and a moderate success in the UK. And I think in the US, it didn't catch on very much at all.
Or if it came straight after the cassette, I think that format might have been more accepted than going to a flat optical disc and then back to a cassette style thing.
Yeah, because people tried with Discmans. You tried with a portable CD player. And in the early days, they were terrible for jumping. They just weren't as good a format as minidisc. DVD came next, staggered between 97 and 99. Let's call it 98. As most of the world had it by then, packing much more data onto the disc, but still the same size as CD. And there are offshoots of the DVD too, super audio CD, using much more audio data than a normal CD.
Did that come? That came before DVD, didn't it? Super SACD.
No, I think it came out. It's part of the same generation as them.
Okay.
There's loads more data on an SACD than there is in a CD. Although if you put it in a CD drive, just a normal CD drive, it just sees it as a CD.
Yeah.
Quite clever.
Okay.
But it never caught on. Things like the Nintendo Wii and the GameCube had their own versions of DVD, slightly different sized discs, I think. And I think that the DVD fairly quickly took on the lion's share of the market from VHS cassettes. It very quickly, we moved from VHS to DVD. And despite what my memory says, Blu Ray quickly followed DVD and was released in 2006. There was a format war, but that didn't stop it, and film releases were mainstream on it pretty quickly. But I don't think Blu Ray killed off DVD in the same way that DVD killed off VHS.
There was, I've got an interesting insight into this. So years ago when I used to work at Game Station, this was when the Xbox 360 had the big plug-in HD DVD side and the PS3 kind of just ran Blu-rays as it were. And it was fascinating to see the quantity of discs and films that came in. And then once HD DVD essentially died off, I believe we were selling the HD DVD add-on box for like £1, and I think the discs were even cheaper. It was hilarious to see just how quickly the pricing just dived, and people were buying these entire boxes and stacks of these HD DVD discs for pennies, absolute pennies. But yeah, it was fascinating just to see that war occur from a retail point of view, and literally reboxing I believe we were selling that DVD drive. Don't quote me on it. I think it was around the £60-70 mark. To go from that down to £1, that's a pretty big price drop.
Yeah.
And not long after Blu-rays came out, the beginning of the end for optical, Netflix launched its streaming service in 2007. It was around before then, but it launched its streaming service in 2007. That's 18 years ago. It doesn't seem like 18 years ago. But it has, I mean, streaming is certainly the most established way. Now, I don't think I'm not sure when I'll buy another optical disc. Sony announced last year that they were closing down recordable Blu-ray manufacturing for consumers. So these are write once, read many times media worms. And they have now announced that business sales aren't enough to sustain it. So that's going to, and sadly, so are mini disc production along with that. So let's be really clear here, because I think people quite often have picked this story up incorrectly. We're not talking about pre-recorded Blu-rays that you would get on Amazon with the latest film on it. Latest Marvel film, the latest Ashens film will still be around on pre-recorded Blu-ray. This is recordable media. This is for consumers and businesses to back up data or make their own home video recordings on it. So maybe it's a funny thing, but I'm not bothered at all about it. I'm not at all concerned about this. And I'll come on to recordable media later on, but let's ask Dean first of all, where are you with physical media?
As someone who grew up with physical media pretty much my entire life, and now seeing that transition to, as you said, more digital streaming, I don't know. I'm kind of sit on the fence with it. Like, there's something nice about still having something tangible. If I can buy something, whether it be a game, although to be honest, some things that you receive are hysterical. In fact, I'm looking at a copy of a Switch game I got where you get a box and inside is a piece of paper with a code, which...
Oh, boo!
Yeah, exactly. Things like that are just ridiculous in my opinion. But, if I can buy something physical and obtain it and get all the feelies with it, I will do it. But, it's the nature of the beast, right? People want things quick. As file sizes get bigger and bigger and the quality of things increase, you start to then think, well, is it easier to just stream it over the internet, or, have to go and get a printing press and print all the pamphlets, the design, the covers and everything else, and those prices start to go up. It is the nature of how things are going, but it is a sad day. Interestingly, I was just having a quick look because I couldn't actually remember if the PlayStation 5 used Blu Ray or Ultra Blu Ray, and it uses the latter. So it'll be interesting to see if Sony are just going to kill Blu Ray and focus entirely on Ultra Blu Ray, or eventually are just going to completely phase out media in itself. Physical media, I mean, not everything. We already have digital versions of consoles, so I feel like the transition's already started.
Yeah, definitely.
In the past, it was a case of the new format can support a higher bit rate. It can give us a better quality picture. But now there's no differentiation between, so long as you've got the bandwidth, I can download that quality of movie and I can watch it. I don't need to use this format specifically to get that quality of experience. So that's where we're different. I didn't want to interrupt you, Dave, earlier when you were talking about DVDs. Sorry, Dean, you had something else to say there.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think one of the things that has guided a lot of this is the speed of internet. If we think about our past, obtaining, be it pirated or legally downloaded content for music would, take a very, very long time, whereas now it's instantaneously. So that's why... the way that we absorb our media with regards to music has completely changed now to probably a good 80 or if not more 90% digitally streamed. And the same as
not even once. Not even once.
Not even once, no. But, the same thing is happening with gaming, right? Streaming services, Stadia being the outlet there that kind of fell off the way, mainly due to very poor marketing and executive decisions. But with regards to some other services, Sony, Xbox, Nvidia with GeForce Now, the faster internet gets, the less you're going to see this physical media happen. And I've always said, once I believe global internet speeds hit a threshold, which I would say is an average of about 40 meg globally, you're going to see a complete shift where I believe game streaming will become a norm for everybody.
I think it's important to say that through the whole history of optical media and physical media, people have bought it because they wanted the content on it. It's not. We might reminisce about VHS style cases or beautiful Laserdisc art, but people bought it because they wanted to watch the film. So if streaming is the way to get it, then that's what they'll do.
Just going back to dates and things, Dave, VHS appeared in 1976 in Japan. DVD was released in 96 in Japan. Like you said, Dave, it came to other regions later. That's a 20-year period for us to get comfortable with the VHS format. So by the time DVD came out, I remember it, and I think we were desperate for it. We were upgrading our... Also, we were upgrading our 10-year-old square televisions to widescreens. We were plumbing fancy surround sound speakers in, and we wanted a format that could show all of that off. So we were so ready for DVD when it came along. Slightly disappointed, perhaps, by video CDs when we first got a glimpse of that and went, oh, it's a bit blocky, it's a bit chunky, but it was a glimpse that something better could be coming. It was 10 years then from DVD to Blu Ray, and that feels like it was a lot shorter period to me because DVD arrived in the UK. And then it felt like we were taking iterative upgrades, especially for computer users, because we had CDs, then we had DVDs with more capacity. And naturally, we expected something else to come along with more capacity again. And that was the Blu Ray. And I have to admit, I did buy a PS2 on the strength of it having a DVD player when it was released. I had that. I enjoyed that. There were very few games for it when it was released, so I was using it as a DVD player. I had no interest in Blu Ray. I didn't rush out to get a device that had it like I did with the PS2. I just moved straight, I think, to online platforms after DVD for streaming and things like that. So, yeah, I think that's probably why I had less interest. But on physical media, you know that I like to buy vinyl records. You know that I like to collect games. Yesterday, I got a really good deal on an old Sierra game called The Colonel's Bequest. Have you heard about that one? Yeah.
Yes, I have. Yeah.
A Laura Bow mystery. That was on the Atari ST again, Dave, which seems to be the affordable platform at the moment for collecting Sierra games specifically. You go to PC, the price spikes, but Atari ST seems like a nice place to collect them. And so I'm scratching that itch. And also, I'm looking forward to producing some physical games with Jason in the Dev Den. So once he's made some games, we're going to make the packaging. We're going to make the manuals. Heba are making cartridges. We can actually put my money where my mouth is, because, you know, I spend plenty of time saying you should have more than a code in the box. The quality of the cardboard wasn't good. It wasn't weighty enough. Well, I'm going to have to be tested by my own standards. Just need a game, Jason. If you can just knock up a game, then we can put that to the test.
Hello, Jason. I think the reason you're finding games a bit easier on the ST to find is because something we learned from an investigation by Ahoy recently. The Amiga didn't start selling big numbers until the 90s, so probably more games sold on the ST of that period before the Amiga came around. So they're cheaper, but I don't know why PC is so expensive.
Well, the nice thing about those Sierra games is on the ST, you get exactly the same box, all the same feelies, everything. It's just a different disc. So you get that same big box experience as you would with the PC version.
Yeah. I love physical media. I've said that before, but optical media, not so much. And I think I can't quite work it out other than it feels right to use a disc in my PC or ST, and it feels right to load a tape on my ST or a Spectrum, whatever. It doesn't take that long to load a tape either. I know people talk about the 15 minutes. As long as you know that the tape's going to work, then it's fine. I love playing vinyl records. But I've noticed with vinyl records, I like records that were made when records was the primary format, because the music fits the record, rather than now where you get an album and it's on four vinyl records, like the last Iron Maiden one I got. But for VHS, DVD, and Blu-ray, I'm not that bothered. I don't think I ever really was that attracted to them. I wonder if it's because when I got videos, they were in a red and white Azad Vizio rental case or the Blockbuster case rather than the real one.
And that is part and parcel of VHS for me. It's the experience of going to the video shop, hoping that what you want is in stock, or choosing something, all the way down to what bag of sweets are we going to get on the way home. That's VHS to me.
Yeah. In fact, I remember us talking this a couple of years ago where we're talking about someone had rebuilt a VHS video shop.
Yeah.
And the idea of browsing through the cases, that's something that they've lost now. But yeah, I think this is clearly the beginning of the end for physical media, but it's a long time to go yet. I don't know when we'll stop seeing Blu-rays able to buy. I mean, we're talking 20, 30 years, I think.
NFC, all of the things. NFC video store that links to Netflix. That's what we need.
Yeah. We are sponsored this week by Pixel Addict magazine. Thank you very much to them. Pixel Addict is Britain's favourite classic computing magazine. It's a new issue, Neil, and what's on the front cover?
Ooh, it is a Z80 and a whole bunch of machines that are powered by the Z80, or Z80 for our American friends.
For American friends, it's also called the Z80. No, it's not. The Zilog. It's the world's most versatile CPU. So Federico Fagan joins them to pay tribute to the discontinued, but not really, Z80. There is a review of the Mr. Pi, that's Taki Udon's thing. Talk about the 32X and why Sega's 32X didn't cause a shake-up. There's even an Atari ST and Amiga article in there. Lots of different stuff there. Pixel.addict.media is the URL. I know that Dean knows it, so I won't put him on the spot and ask him, because that won't work. Go and buy it. Thank you for sponsoring us.
Thank you. Rob Crowther has submitted a story this week. Thank you, Rob, to make us aware of the Video Game History Foundation's digital library launch. And if, like Rob, you've come across some news that you'd like to share with us, and I would highly encourage you to do this, because it's been a bit slow the last couple of weeks, hasn't it, the news submissions?
There's still plenty there, but not the absolute barrage that we had just before Christmas.
Yeah, so head to reddit.com/r/thisweekinretro, and you can just post a link of anything that tickles your fancy that you might like us to chat about, as Rob has done. Now, Video Game History Foundation, or the VGHF, I think I'm going to shorten it to, has digitized over 1,500 magazines. Never before seen, put my teeth in, never before seen game development materials as well. And it's made them all available online to browse, or at least it will do on the 30th of January. So by the time this show comes out, yes. Which means I haven't been able to look at it yet, but we've seen some screenshots, and it looks like, well, everything that you'd want it to look like and to be filled with. There's artwork, press kits, promo materials, and lots more from iconic video games. And you will be able to read fully the out-of-print magazines that are in there. So this goes far beyond, for example, the inventory system that I'm putting together, where you can just see the covers of magazines. In this one, you'll be able to browse, you'll be able to filter, you'll be able to just type in a word and it will search all the magazines, search for, I don't know, MeanMachineDean, and it will find any mention of you in all those magazines. Every single page scanned and text searchable. Now, quite how this sits with copyright laws, I don't know, but VGHF have been behind raising awareness of and proposing changes to DMCA regulations, so this is in the US, to allow the sharing of out-of-print games. That continues to be refused by the US Copyright Office, and so you won't see games in this digital library unless they're feeling particularly ballsy, but at the moment I think it's all print media. And clearly there's different rules for that type of media. I'm afraid I'm not an expert on that front, so I can't tell you why. It was these guys who also conducted a survey in 2023, which concluded that 13% of video game history is represented in the current marketplace, and the remaining 87% is completely inaccessible without pirating it or going to an archive to access it. So firstly, a round of applause and a slap on the back for them for going to this effort. I'm sure it'll be a great resource to entertain ourselves browsing through it, as well as for research. I know I'll be looking through it for researching episodes for sure. I don't know how we could do this in the UK, but a longer term goal, I guess, is to scan all of the magazines and materials page by page here at the Retro Collective. But that's from a preservation point of view. I couldn't share that online, I don't think. But my attitude towards it now, and I would encourage everyone to have this attitude, is capture it now, scan it now, store it now, digitize it now, and worry about all that later. Capture it while you can. It's important work that they're doing. It's something that I think will be popping up a lot more. Do we want lots and lots of people doing this? I know I do. Or would it be better for people to donate their magazines to somewhere like VGHF to be preserved to their standard and made searchable? What do you think, Dave? Do you and also, do you find, like me, Dave, you're actually being drawn to magazines more and more, and Dean, as we get older, for a nostalgic fix, rather than sometimes playing an actual game? I know I've caught myself making a cuppa and sitting in the cave library just for that reason.
Lots of questions there to answer. So first of all,
I want answers, Dave.
As to, you can't handle the truth. As far as donating them to museums, yes, as long as the museum is making progress through it. You're making progress through it.
I just want to point out that wasn't an appeal by me to send your magazines. That was, do you think it's better to go to somewhere like this place where we know they've got the full setup to scan every page to the highest quality? Yeah.
There are museums where stuff just goes in a corner. It's unfortunate, and I'm able to see the process that you're going through as you're inventorying stuff. I mean, I like that you're doing it. It's great that you're doing it. In other places, are much older and haven't. But even still, you've been around for a long time, and it's only now you're getting speed on that. You're catching up on that work.
Yeah.
I understand why, though. It's never the most urgent thing to do. And then even once you've done all that, and you think you're a few thousand in just now, you've got all the scanning and stuff to do. I know that I've read about people passing round these collections of magazines, particularly the rarer ones, and they ended up being thrown out. Jason Scott of the Internet Archive was sharing a story of how annoyed he was that he donated a large collection of quite rare magazines to somewhere and they just threw them out eventually. But I do like magazines. I'm a big fan of magazines, always have been. And there's an important thing about magazines. Try as we might, we can't now not know what comes next in the history of gaming. We can't write a magazine now like we might have done, for example, talking about System Shock in 1994 without knowing that Half-Life is coming a few years later. We do know it. We can't pretend we don't know it. So we can't write that with the ignorance is not the right word, without that fog of war, call it then, spoiling things. Although I will say that there's a modern magazine, Sega Mania, who I'm quite impressed with the job they do of pretending that they don't know and trying as much as they can not to know.
Just putting my hand up there, Dave, because all 7 back issues of Sega Mania are in my digital support bundle. Buy it now at rmcretro.store.
Stop it!
Carry on.
So they'd write the magazine as if they were doing it at the period the magazine was written. And they make a good job of that. But if I look at, for example, if I look at the Amiga in magazines around 1985, the story told there is quite different than the story you get from most YouTube videos and Wikipedia and other contemporary sources. Stories have been told and retold so many times, and they end up going into this circle where they feed each other. And that's not to say the magazines are true, because they might have been wrong at the time, but that's what's true at the time. That's what people were thinking at the time, not now. I also think, though, that magazines are an important part of the hype around games. I've talked about how the game starts when you touch the box, but maybe it starts when you read the breathless preview in Amstrad Action.
And hardware as well. I mean, I think the most hyped I ever got about a console release was the PlayStation 2, and I really bought into the whole, it's a supercomputer, it's banned from certain countries, it could launch missiles in Iraq and all the rest of it. So yeah, I really got suckered into that. Dean, is it fair to infer from your name that you were a Mean Machines reader when it comes to magazines?
I read a lot of magazines. In fact, I would probably say my parents were constantly complaining that the amount of times I'd go, I want that and that and that. And it was like Nintendo official magazine, Edge, God knows what else, Amiga format, and God knows whatever else. But yes, I was. Do I still read magazines? Probably not as much as I did. Do I go back and read old issues? Yes. And I think there's a very important part to some of this, which is a little bit morbid. You know, some of the people who created games, wrote for, you know, some of these magazines are getting to the tender ages, and, you know, some people may have passed on, and, you know, we haven't got them to go back to. So sometimes the writings and knowledge of people is left in paper format. So preserving that, I think, is an incredibly important thing.
How do you like to consume it? Do you tend to buy old magazines, or are you on Internet Archive? Or
tomato sauce, a little bit of salt.
A little bit of sriracha on the side. Sriracha is top tier, by the way, and I'll fight anyone to the death. Right. Anyway,
who would disagree with that? It's great.
Yeah, good. I'm sure someone in chat will be like, "Oh, it's too hot. I don't like it." Just have it. Anyway.
Calm down, Dean.
Yes,
it's not that kind of podcast. Just calm yourself. Just calm yourself down. Big breaths.
Sorry, the mean side was coming out. Yeah. I mean, I admittedly sign up to Retro Gamer, which I actually get digitally, just for storage reasons. You know, I mean, I've got a cupboard full of stuff. In fact, Neil, I probably should just send you half of it, or possibly send it to the Video Game History Foundation.
Yes,
send it to them instead. Neil's rubbish.
Yeah. But yes, I would definitely consume things. As I said, if I come to the cave, I do like to just have a quick flick through, or potentially have a look at or munch, yes, or potentially look through at the potential, availability of what you've got. Cast my memory back to some launches similar to what you said. I remember, I think I've got a copy of Official PlayStation magazine when they first announced the PS2, and there was like a fold-out part that kind of showed you like the front of the PS2 for the first time, and I think there was a disc that came with it, or it might have been a DVD or a CD that you put in your PC, and it had wallpapers and stuff. But yeah, going back and looking at magazines during console launches is fascinating for two reasons. A, to see the hype, and also B, to see the amount of BS they would write in some of these things. It's hilarious. It was like, it's the most powerful thing in the world. It will dominate. It will take over the world. It will run your kitchen automatically, and you can order food from it, and half of that would never actually happen. But yes, it's fascinating to have a look back through history. I think it's a very important part for the reasons I said, and I think it would be great if there is a way of being able to search particular phrasings and being able to pull up potential comparisons. We share a love for an Amiga, Neil. Dave, your love for Atari STs.
Hang on. I do love the Amiga. I've got one. I've got a very nice Amiga here. I do love it.
Lies. Anyway, so having those reviews of two different games from two different formats. In fact, the example I saw of that was Speedball 2. I didn't mention it in the video that I made recently, but funny enough, the reviews between the Amiga versions and the ST versions, when you read it online, completely contrasting. The Amiga's one's like, it's the best game ever, and the ST were like, yeah, it's all right. But yeah, it was really fascinating to see some of those reviews on different platforms by different magazine manufacturers.
Oh, well, we can't take Dave's first love away from him. We all have our first love.
Yeah, the version of Speedball 2 on the Atari ST is tremendous. It's one of my favourite games. I'm surprised it didn't get good reviews. I know the Amiga version has... the Amiga version is almost the same.
How have we got into Amiga versus Atari ST from magazine preservation?
Yes,
how have we got
on.
here? How has this happened?
Manipulation. It's what happens.
Come on.
The Amiga has ice cream and I think markings on the pitch, but other than that, it's the same game. It's fantastic. It shall not be knocked.
What I am seeing with offers of magazine donations to the museum is patterns now that I'm getting quite a few offers. And the one that keeps coming up is Edge magazine. I've got quite an extensive collection of Edge magazine, and people often come forward and offer Edge, which I now politely decline because I don't want to hoard too many copies of these things. And I don't know why that is. I think it's perhaps because it was always marketed as something of a premium magazine, so people don't really want to throw it away, and they I don't know, maybe they feel like they put more money into it than they would other magazines. Maybe it's just the quality of writing means that it is, that it's a respected magazine that they feel needs to be shared. Dean, you're bouncing up and down.
Yeah, I think one of the reasons people used to go to Edge was for its kind of impartial third-party view rather than buying the official magazines at the time. So you were kind of getting a third-party review of a console or a game or some new piece of technology rather than someone just banging their drum saying this is the best thing ever because we're on the official magazine.
Or the Captain in the Amiga format had a huge interest in promoting the Amiga, even if they weren't official. They wanted to tell you the Amiga was good, everything's fine. Yeah. Keep buying the Amiga.
Or if I flip that argument around, it's because people don't care and just want to get rid of Edge magazines, and I don't get offers of things like Crash and Zap magazine because people love that so much and want to keep hold of it. I'm not sure. Anyway, magazines, an interesting topic, and well done to the Video Game History Foundation for their digital library, which by the time this show goes out, Duncan should have put a link, hopefully in the show notes, and we can go and overwhelm it with traffic from our huge audience. So we're going to go and have a look now.
The GIF.
Sorry?
The GIF. The GIF.
The GIF.
Yes.
Okay.
Dave's housekeeping. Dave's housekeeping. Dave's housekeeping.
I'd like to welcome on some new patrons. So welcome on Gary, and welcome on Emrys, and welcome on David. Thank you for becoming patrons.
And thank you to Lee at More Fun Making It, who recommended us to his patron base, as did Rob Smith Dev. Thank you. It all helps to get the word out there.
I said last week that games were bigger than the movie industry, and it seems I may not have been correct. Or at least it's difficult to tell.
Define bigger. Define bigger.
I know. It looks like it might be the case that games are bigger than box office revenue, and that seems to be where the figures come from. But the basic point does still stand, though. Gaming is massive, massive, massive business, and it's made to look like a childish, unimportant pursuit, sneered at by critics of other creative pursuits. So there you go.
Until they decide that the license is good enough to make a movie about it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And then they are fawning all over it. Fourth Directive links a picture of Tab Clear and asks, "Is this the Virtual Boy of soft drinks?"
I don't understand that.
Well, I tried to work out what it was. See, I remember the excitement about Tab Clear. Everybody wanted Tab Clear, and then they tasted it and thought, "I prefer Coke, actually." And I wonder if that's what happened to the Virtual Boy. Everyone wanted the Virtual Boy, and then looked at it and went, "I can't be bothered with that."
Well, we didn't even get the chance to try it in the UK. It didn't get sold over here. So, yeah. Dean?
I thought maybe the Tab Clear thing was just because it caused headaches like the did. I don't know. First time I used the Virtual Boy, I had one of the worst headaches I've ever had in my life after 5 minutes. So I did remember trying Tab Clear. I think someone must have imported it, and I was just like, it tastes like naff Cokes or other Coca-Cola varieties are available. But yeah, it just tasted naff. So
Tasted
supermarket special Coke.
Between flat Coke and not quite flat Coke. It's
that's it.
That window. Yes. Yeah.
As Dave takes a sip of his soda, there we go. That's not Tab Clear.
It's Coca-Cola from a Coca-Cola glass. In fact, it's Coke Zero caffeine.
Oh, only an Atari ST owner would drink that.
Aye.
Anyway, thanks to Arv, who submitted the story about the VIC-20 version of Elite, which is now complete. God, that's impressive and ready to play. Download it and fight some space pirates now. Elite on the VIC-20. Is there a system that it's not on yet? It must be on everything by now.
I don't think it's on things that it can't do, like the Atari 2600. Someone will have to work out how to do that with no memory.
Is it in Doom? Can you play Elite in Doom? That's what
almost
we need
certainly.
next.
Almost certainly. Can you play Doom in Elite in Doom? Some sad news now, though. Jonathan Nash from Your Sinclair Amiga Power has passed away. Very funny man. And next time you are going through these magazines, keep out an eye out for him and his humour. And thank you, Oki Yam, for submitting that.
I submitted a story to the subreddit, and it was the story that it's never too late for a fixed SimCity 2000. SimCity 2000 has been patched so that you can play the original version on modern operating systems, which attempts have been made to do that before, but there were still some residual bugs, and that's all been cleaned up even further now, so you can get your SimCity 2000 fix. And while we're on the topic, our good friend Ian Lee, who, hi if you're listening, Ian, this week interviews LGR on his podcast. What's his podcast called?
Random Access Memories.
Access Memories. And LGR, we have to choose a game because you were on it and Holly was on it, and you chose a game to talk about. No prizes for guessing what LGR has chosen.
Yeah. Duke Nukem 3D.
No, SimCity 2000. And that's not a spoiler, it's on the thumbnail.
Yeah. SimCity 2000, as far as I'm concerned, is the SimCity.
Yes, me too.
That's the one. That's the one. I know that you could argue for SimCity 3000 quite convincingly, but for me, SimCity 2000 is the one.
That and the CDTV version.
No. You can play Doom in Microsoft Word now and probably shouldn't. Thank you to Squelch411. Another E1M1, and that's plenty type experience, I think. Load it up. That's pretty cool, but you'll never go back to it. It's amazing what you can play Doom on these days.
That's a very bold port.
Oh, no. No!
Someone has made a mini arcade cabinet. That's not remarkable in itself. But this one achieved something that I kind of gave a fleeting thought to all those years ago and thought that's impossible. No one could actually do that. Well, they have. They fitted a real CRT, mini CRT, inside. I've just seen who submitted this, inside the mini arcade.
Straight face.
Thank you for submitting this story, King of Your Fart.
And there's loads more in the subreddit. Thank you very much. Go and submit some stories now. Or if you want to have a little break from work, maybe sit and have a crafty viewing of the log of the people's submissions that I've submitted this week. I'll give you something to browse through. Have a look. Submit your stories. Thank you very much. Or don't, just listen.
Oh, crafty.
We talked about FPS before. One of the greatest genres of games. We've certainly covered it. In fact, too many times before when we've covered it when someone makes Doom run on something like Microsoft Word
every week
or PDF every week. I know that our friend Reese has talked about having a section in Reese's Ramble for what Doom runs on this week for Doom News. We even talked about the fantastic stories in id Software when the two Johns being so phenomenally talented but clashing to the point where the company was ripped apart. But something we've not talked about, and I hadn't really thought about it too much until now, is today's submission from SquareUps 411. At first glance, it's something really simple. It's just a list of the best FPS in every year of the 90s. Now, that in itself is interesting, but the big story it's telling is the innovations in FPS over that 10-year period that took us from almost nothing. I mean, there were FPS before then, MIDI-Maze and the Atari STs, for example, to nothing, to really what is established in FPS games and is broadly the same 25 years later. I think by the end of the 90s, we had the genre pretty much nailed down. It starts off with a reasonably obscure game, at least in comparison to the others on the list, Corporation. It was co-developed for the Atari ST and the Amiga, and then later ported to the PC. It's a game from Core Design in the UK and follows on in no way at all from the last game they released before it, Rick Dangerous. It is, yeah. It is an FPS, and it clearly predates id's efforts, and it really does feel different to theirs. It's much, much slower paced, but there's more depth and there's more complication to it. There's hacking and there's damage to your body parts. Your character has stats like an RPG, and there's icons on the bottom to click on. It is still the FPS formula of exploration, unlocking doors, killing enemies, looting and getting to the next level. But it's clear to me that id didn't play this and didn't develop their games based on this. So Hover Tank is totally separate to that. And it always reminded me of the Eidolon, a much older LucasArts game from 1985 where you would explore caves in a steampunk vehicle looking for dragons.
Yeah, Corporation feels a little bit like an attempt to evolve the dungeon crawler from flick screen to something more dynamic than, the invention of the FPS.
Yeah, I mean, if we were talking about Dungeon Master and then Eye of the Beholder, then Corporation, and then we're talking about
Ultima Underworld.
Yes.
It's Ultima.
Yeah, Ultima Underworld, and then on to Morrowind and all the rest of it, then clear this would fit in. Next on the list, though, is The Terminator, which is a PC game from 1991. It's a bit of an open world game with driving and shooting, and to be honest, it looks like someone took one of the games from the Mercenary series and made it simpler. It does have nice atmospheric music, and it's made by, and this is a surprise, Bethesda, the same people that would go on to make the Elder Scrolls series. Again, this is not in the lineage of id games.
The Terminator, I had to look up because I know of Bethesda Terminator games like Future Shock, which I really got into. I loved those in the 90s, but I didn't play this one in 91. I looked it up. It looks like someone made it in 3D construction kit, and it's got a real primary color palette. It really captures that gritty killing machine feel, doesn't it? The bright reds and yellows and blues.
Next, though, we do move on to id. I did so well in not calling them ID. For all the years that I played Doom and so on before the internet, I knew them as ID, and it's not, it's id.
In before the comments, I know yellow is not a primary colour. Thank you.
So while id isn't in with their first FPS, it's their first big deal. Wolfenstein 3D, a sequel to an old Apple II game. And if I'm brutally honest, there's a lot less to the gameplay and the world than there were in the two games before. It's a very simple game, this. However, what they did bring to the table is frenetic action and shooting. The last two games were really plodding, and it's clear that's what was needed, the fast-paced action. Of course, then we go on to Doom, and then we head to a much more complex game, System Shock, and it becomes clear that the author of this list, Ben Jesse, is not an id purist, because System Shock is definitely in the action-adventure category, not just FPS.
And I think something Wolfenstein had going for it was just the simplicity of storyline. There are goodies, there are baddies. Shoot the Nazis, that's it. Simple to understand.
Yeah.
That was key.
And simplicity and speed, turning it into an arcadey style game rather than what we saw in Terminator and more so even in Corporation. The rest of the list, though, is fairly uncontroversial. Goes on to Quake, Dark Forces, 007 GoldenEye, Half-Life, and finally Unreal Tournament. So bringing in the polish and the real 3D of Quake, the storytelling and setting of Dark Forces. The console people join us and couch battling from GoldenEye, the environmental storytelling, compelling narrative of Half-Life, and then the peak of online fast fragging Unreal Tournament. I'm pleased that they didn't just stick to the basic FPS formula in determining what is and what isn't. The genre is bigger than ever now, and it really does include lots of action-adventure. And of course, Bethesda did come back with their Elder Scrolls and their Fallout titles, and they're now going closer to the FPS shooter side of things as the franchises progress. The interesting gameplay, though, from Corporation, from System Shock, and from the open world stuff has stayed and it's come back into the genre. And as I've been working towards a question here for Dean, because you played loads of a game that Neil and I talked about, we thought initially it was quite FPS shooter kind of thing, but then viewers told us that no, we're wrong, there's lots more to it. Tell us about Indiana Jones and the Big Circle before you give us your thoughts on the list and the 10-year progression of FPS.
Do you know, when I first heard about the Indiana Jones game being announced, I was trying to understand how you can capture that whole world in an FPS environment. I mean, from what we've had historically, it's point-and-click adventures. There were a few 3D attempts, let's call it. I think one of them was half decent. And that was kind of the way I would have expected it to go. Now, that being said, the current game does have a third-person-esque view in certain parts when you're climbing up ropes or climbing up a wall or doing specific movements. But the majority of it is FPS. And honestly, I think it is the perfect, you can probably quote me on this, it's the perfect Indiana Jones game, in my opinion. They have captured, the environment is stunning from all of the countries you go to. When you, I mean, I won't spoil it too much, you've probably seen the start of it. You end up in this vast rainforest, and just looking up and feeling like you're in this huge environment is so, I don't know, it's so inviting. It really just captures the entire feel of being in this massive environment.
I did watch Dean stream it, actually, and Dave, this will disappoint you. He tried to punch a camel.
I did.
What did you try and punch a camel for? What did the camel do to you?
Because it had the hump. Anyway, so look, you lot get bad jokes and give me one.
High five,
right?
Dean. High five.
Yay! But no, honestly, there are certain sections where, for instance, you'll go into particular parts of Egypt. You'll do lots of underground parts, and you feel very enclosed and very claustrophobic in areas where you're having to use lights and torches to see where you're going. And then, you know, suddenly you pop out in this massive area. So the way that they've captured depth and size is incredible. The audio is fantastic. The one thing that really did intrigue me, and I know it's a completely strange thing to say, is the voice acting is exceptional. The sections when you're in Egypt, the dialogue being spoken by the people you interact with is actually local to the area. So it is Egyptian Arabic, and it is specific to that area.
Do you know that's essential, I think? Not the Egyptian Arabic part of it, but the idea for me, for Indiana Jones is an adventure thing. The films are about a massive sense of adventure, which I was just complaining this week isn't so much in TV and films these days. But I love the adventure side of things. So this game has to capture the adventure. So you have to feel as if you've travelled somewhere. So yeah,
exactly.
that's why that works. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the other nice thing is, again, very little small bits like the food and stuff that you pick up is all local to the area. So it's not just like here's a generic random floor pizza and generic ham that you're picking up. You know, it is specific and localized to the regions you're going to. There's little things that you pick up that help develop the story. Whether you want to read those or not is entirely up to you. But it leads you to this grand crescendo at the end when you suddenly discover what everything is about.
No spoilers.
No, I won't. No, but it's definitely worth a play if you get the chance. It's fantastic. If you do get the chance to play it on PC, there is a caveat. It will only work on NVIDIA RTX graphics cards. That's by design.
Should we buy an NVIDIA RTX graphics card?
Yeah, honestly, I know it sounds silly to say, but to buy it, to play this game at its best, genuinely I would. Admittedly, my own PC wasn't actually powerful enough to play it smoothly, so I actually used GeForce Now to stream the entire thing, and it worked flawlessly, and the ray tracing in the game is astonishing. Just like I said, the lighting effects in the game are exceptional, and they've really done a great job. And it leads to the Indiana Jones theme all the way to the end, which is worth its weight in gold. I would highly recommend it. Is it the perfect game? No, there are certain points where the hit boxes were incredibly questionable. I was taking a gun and shooting someone in the head, and they basically ate the bullet. But
it was authentic regional food.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. But yeah, again, there are certain parts in that game that were just it was a fantastic joy. And just to finish it off, the thing that really made it nice was it wasn't I played Space Marine 2, which is again equally a fantastic game, but it was about, I want to say, 6 hours long, and after that it kind of forces you online, which I can kind of understand why.
Yeah.
But with Indiana Jones, I think it must have been well over 12, 15 hours, something like that. So yeah, there's a lot of content, and that's forgetting all of the little side quests and everything else that you can do. So it is a fantastic game, and they have done a sterling job, and it's nice to see the franchise have a proper reboot, and it just captures that Indiana Jones thing as I enjoyed as a child.
There we go. A comprehensive review of the new Indiana Jones.
Yeah, we just want to know what you thought about it.
Yeah, and,
there you go.
All of those things that Dean was gushing about wouldn't have come without the evolution of FPS games that came before it, and this list that Dave has been looking at today. I was in the cave this week playing Super Mario Kart. I know it's not an FPS, but when you go into battle mode, head-to-head split screen, and you're seeking out the weapons and hunting each other down, there's a little bit of a FPS feel to it, despite being in the third person and in a go-kart. But you know what I'm saying. This list is a pretty solid list. The 90s was the decade of FPS evolution. There's a vast gulf in both hardware and programming techniques on display from the start of the 90s to the end of that decade. Dean?
One thing that is fascinating, and I was just having
one more thing on Indiana Jones.
No, not at all. Is when you actually look at the list of platforms that these games come out for, the majority of them are PC, and then you start to get to Doom, which is on everything under the sun, and then you start to see the consoles get introduced, and I think at that point, that's when you start to see some of the technology change, especially when you get to that Quake era, because obviously you've got more power, more frame rate, more graphical enhancements. So with each iteration and every jump onto a different platform, you start to slowly see that evolution occur with the tech that's introduced. But it's fascinating to see where the FPS genre can go, because I always thought we'd kind of peaked, but after what I've just played, I'm very much mistaken.
Yeah, I think that the elements, though, of what you just played were there in the 90s.
Yes.
It's just a case of putting them together better and better and more polish and depth.
And with each release, we got new jargon, we got new moments like, we've got volumetric fog now. I think was that Quake maybe. And then, you can shoot the enemy in the leg and they react like they've actually been shot in the leg. And games like Soldier of Fortune really lent into that. And I think that's why I was maybe a bit more into FPSs then than I am now. Although, like Dean, I am loving Indiana Jones because I was excited to see the technical advances and to unlock parts of my video card that were still cold, or in the earlier ones, push my CPU when it was, software rendered harder than ever. What I do think is missing from this list, and I know there is elements of this in some of the games like Half-Life, humor. I would add Redneck Rampage to the list, even though it was using the build engine. Speaking
Rise
of
of
build,
Triad?
Rise of the Triad.
I like that just for dog mode.
Dog mode. Where's Duke Nukem 3D? It's not in the list. Duke Nukem 3D's got to be in a top 10 FPS.
So which year was that? Was that 96?
96, yeah. It wasn't the most technically advanced, but it had story, it had humor, it had modding, it had map building.
If it was the same year as Quake, then it can't go on the list.
Is it only one per year? Is that what?
Yes, one per year. So if it was 1996,
Quake has to take it because Quake went fully 3D, properly 3D.
I can't believe we're sitting here. We don't know it was 1996.
It was
Let's
96. Duke Nukem was 96.
Yeah, it was. It was 96. Just in case we were wrong.
Yeah.
No, 96. Quake has to take that year. It has to. Sorry.
We also had the Marathon series, if we're going to give Apple owners some love, because of course that was Bungie that led to Microsoft grabbing that for Halo on the Xbox. Thief, 1998, an FPS.
It's an important one because, you're going to tell us why it's an important one.
Well,
because
you'd call it a stealth them up because it's not out and out shooting, but it did influence other games that used the stealth element. Arguably, GoldenEye had a stealth element. You could play it in a stealthy mode, but Thief was all about the stealth, and it did influence other games to use stealth more.
One game that never gets a shout, and funny enough, I've been trying to actually get this running on a modern machine, and I used to play it as a child many moons ago, was Shogo Mobile Armor Division.
Oh, yes, yeah.
The only way I can describe it is an anime mech type shooter FPS. But what was quite cool was you could go from, I guess, being human-sized into suddenly this big mech and fight other mechs. And it doesn't get enough love. I would love to get it working on modern tech. So if anyone in the comments knows how I can do that, let me know. But a game that doesn't get a lot of love. And I think it actually did a lot in terms of, as I said before, scaling, where suddenly you're this big and you're suddenly staring up at this massive mech and suddenly you're inside it kind of, with big oversized guns shooting other mechs down.
And the FPS that I played the most, I think, in the 90s was the original Rainbow Six, which felt a bit like Laser Squad, but as an FPS. I really loved the strategy element of the original game. Thinking through how you'd approach each mission, you had to plan it out on a map, telling your AI units what doors to wait at and what signal you'll give them to burst in the door. I haven't played a modern Rainbow Six game lately. I don't know if it still works in that way or if it's just gone out and out deathmatch, Dean.
So what I would actually recommend is a modern game called Ready or Not. I've been playing that on my Steam Deck, and it's probably the closest to the original Rainbow Six as you'll be able to get. So you get to use the little mirror that goes under the door, see where people are, and then you can kind of split your units into two to kind of breach two different areas. You can have like a little camera in the corner so you can kind of see the viewpoint from the other teams and stuff. Ready or Not. Right. Really, really good game.
I'll look that one up. Thank you. Good recommendation. That's why we need the youth on this podcast.
Yes.
Youth. Yeah.
I'm not young. I look young, but I'm not.
So, in conclusion, good list. I think you probably need 20 games at least on there to capture the minutiae of the evolution of FPS through the 90s, but I'm not arguing with what's on there, Dave. Time now for this week's community question of the week, which you can participate in at reddit.com/r/thisweekinretro, where you will always find the latest question pinned. And the question last week was, which one item from your collection would you put in a museum? It belongs in a museum. It could be a personal story connected to the item. It could be what you think was genre defining. It could be something that you think changed the course of micro or console history. And Duncan has put an answer in for us.
He's cheated.
He says, not from my collection, but I couldn't pick one thing. Can you put an entire computer show into a museum? The big ones that were held in London hotels, etc. I don't think you get those anymore. Not like that anyway. Big Dunk. So,
Thank you, Duncan.
Computer shows into the museum. Let's see who else has answered. Dave, do you want to go with the top answer?
Yeah, Robert Crowther says, I'm going to cheat. Why does everyone cheat? I'm going to cheat because, in a way similar to Duncan, because although I own different versions, my thing would be an Amiga 1000. Back in the 80s, we used to have an annual family trip to the Commodore Computer Show at Novotel in London. On one of those trips, the venue had a meeting of IC Pug at the time, the Independent Commodore Products User Group, of which my dad was a member, and teenage me was allowed to tag along. It was at this meeting that we were given a demo of the upcoming new Commodore, the Amiga. It's hard to explain now just how mind-blowing that machine was back then compared to what I was used to on the C64. It could do things that looked better and faster than anything on the C64, and it could do all of these things at the same time. I'd never wanted anything so badly, and I never got one, although I did later end up with a 500 pretty much at the same time as they released in the UK. The Amiga 1000 was really, really expensive for a home owner to have. It was groundbreaking. It was a workstation-like machine for a bit more than what you'd expect to pay for a home computer. So really what I want to put in the museum is that sense of wonder that I felt the first time I saw an Amiga.
Lightning in a bottle. I want to put that in a museum. Yeah. Nicely described. Thank you, Robert. Frosty Cheesecake says, my Zipstick, it outlasted every other joystick I had for my Specky back then, and it'll outlast every other exhibit in the museum too. It should stand proudly in a display case with a load of broken joysticks of various other brands and a copy of Daley Thompson's Decathlon. Nice.
I had about half a dozen joysticks before I got my Zipstick, and it was the last joystick like that I needed because it lasted. Before then I had, remember the creaky Amstrad ones that were absolutely rotten, that didn't have a single bit of metal in the shaft? And then we had the Cheetah ones and all the rest of it, and they just weren't made to last. And it was in their interest not to make them to last. And then the Zipstick came along, micro switches, problems gone forever.
Zipstick or a competition pro. He later goes on to say Nokia 3310s should go in the cabinet with Zipsticks. So, Dean, I don't know if you've got the page open.
I do. I was just going to quickly go back and say the Independent Commodore Product Users Group, I would love to have seen the Trevor Tortoise Mouse be presented there and just get their opinion. Right, where did we get
Tungsten
to?
Orchid is the next
There
answer.
we go. Tungsten Orchid. I wanted to say Douglas Adams, but some may disagree with the classification as an artifact. Interesting. He was a passionate advocate of the value of computers, as well as an early computer user. The fact that I've not managed to add him to any of my retro collection may also disqualify his inclusion. As an alternative, I'd probably put a 6502 processor.
Oh, he's managed to get Arthur C. Clarke in his collection, but not Douglas Adams yet.
Yes.
Yeah, good answer. Lots of other great answers. Beta Tyrone talks about the lens lock, to which Indigo Prime says, I think you misread museum as bottomless pit of eternal hellfire. Yeah. Prefim says a Hector 2 computer, which his dad got back on an Open University course in the 80s. A Hector 2, not heard of that one. Any others stand out for you, Dave?
Lemmings on a CD TV because he thinks it might outlast the floppy version. I'm not sure. I'm not sure whether optical or floppies will die first. I know that optical discs delaminate.
Fantastic. And there's a nice long story from FAC191 talks about when they donated Tau SETI for the ZX Spectrum to a museum and what happened there. But I won't read it out because there's a couple of paragraphs there. And I would encourage you to go to our subreddit and check that out. And that leads us now to our question of the week for this week, which is, we talked about the evolution of FPS games and the influence each had. But what game from any genre do you think had the biggest influence on the games industry? Apart from Doom. That's the caveat here. Apart from Doom, the most influential game.
Yeah. So we're not saying it has to be an FPS. In fact, I'd encourage you to step away from FPS because that's what we just talked about. What game is the most influential? Here we go.
So please head to reddit.com/r/This Week in Retro to put your answers forward. Also submit any stories that you'd like us to think about. And if you've enjoyed listening to us today and you'd like to support what we do, head to patreon.com/This Week in Retro. All of the links are in the show notes. Subscribe as well. We always forget to say that. If you're watching on a platform where you can subscribe.
And not just subscribe, but smash that bell. Smash it. Hammer that bell.
We're not even joking because we can actually see how many people on YouTube have pressed the bell to be notified when a release comes out. I think it's about 13%. Is that right?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Let's get that up. Let's get that up. So if you're listening on YouTube, go and press the bell now.
Rookie numbers.
You can also find where to follow MeanMachineDean using the links in the show notes. Go and watch him on his Twitch streams. Check out consolerevive.com if you're looking for shells and accessories for your vintage consoles. Make them look like
Dean streams are great if you want to see a grown man be brought nearly to tears by the bullying in his comments.
That's one way of putting it. Yes.
In a good way. Yeah, Dean has a habit of having a soundboard which gets completely abused on his streams.
Yes. Quite a cozy stream.
It's the same
I also have AI on my channel as well, so you can have David Attenborough read out certain things. We've had some rather interesting and spicy comments from Sir David Attenborough. So if you feel like asking David a really random question, I would invite you to come along and do so.
Fantastic. Check out all the links in the show notes. Thank you as always for taking the time to watch and listen, and enjoy the rest of your days and weekends. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Waving.
Bye.
Very enthusiastic wave from Dean.
This Week in Retro was presented by Neil from RMC and Dave. It was produced by me, Duncan Styles. The podcast version of the show is available through your favourite podcaster, including Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and the video version is available on the This Week in Retro YouTube channel.
Join our community subreddit at r/This Week in Retro to suggest and vote on the stories we cover on the show. If you watch This Week in Retro on YouTube, please give us a like and subscribe to help us reach new viewers.
If you enjoy our show and would like to support it, then please check out the link to our Patreon page in the show notes or description. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time for more up-to-date news for out-of-date tech.